My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
It's Monday night, so you know what that means. It's time for a little old show called Around the UFL, and the season is over and the panel gets smaller, and here we are. But the season's over, but here we are. We're still here. We got plenty of things to talk about. The pipeline from the UFL to the NFL has begun. We have some off-season movements. We got James Larson in the house. We got Nick Thorne in the house. I think Ducky's going to probably be joining us a little bit later. Zachy Boy might be joining. Who knows? That's the beauty of going live. Let's make sure, speaking of which, that we are actually live. I don't see the chat in here, so I'm going to get risky. I'm going to refresh this page again. But you know what? We found out it didn't do anything bad last time, so let's just see. You guys talk about James. How you feeling this week? Let me refresh.
I'm doing well. You know, it's been a fun week or so of seeing guys go to the NFL, which is kind of the ultimate goal of this league. I feel a little bit strange now. It's just Thorne and I in a room, two guys in a room. Who knows what's gonna happen? But okay, good. Ref is back, so I'm glad he jumped in quick. I'm not seeing the chat either, so.
I see live stream chat now. I just don't see anything in the chat. So if somebody could be so gracious and put something in the chat, we will see. I will pull up the YouTube one as well, just to see what's happening. Mr. Thorne, well, first all I heard with James is two guys in a room. I don't know what's going to happen. But next, Thorne, how are you doing today?
Yeah, we're going to just skip over that. I'm doing pretty well. You know, obviously this is the time that excites me a lot. You know, a lot of people have seen, you know, my articles trying to predict who's going to go to the NFL. And so I love this time of year, and we're got 10 players in the last week now on NFL rosters. So I'm excited to kind of break all those down today.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So maybe we just jump right into it. I'm still trying to pull up the chat here because I got a feeling the chat just, I don't know. Maybe I could try to refresh it one more time. They can hear and see us. Two guys, one show. I'll just mention the funny ones at least if I have to.
The other thing you can do, Ref, I mean, you know, it's the off season. Who really cares? Is I know Jake at one of the shows, Jake or Zach pulled up the chat and just had it up there with us. Like,
let's see. Can I pop it out like that? I might have to pull it out. Wow. What are we talking about here? We'll get to that. Let's pull up the rosters here real quick. The NFL tracker. And James, I'm pretty sure the tracker's up to date. Am I right?
It is.
All right. We might as well just share the screen here. We can go through who we got in all its glory here. So let's see. Share my screen. Okay, let's do the one with the bank account details. Here we go. All right, we got the right one. So where do we want to start?
I mean, I think we got to kick it off with the obvious one. Jay Corbin was the first signing, UFL to NFL signing this offseason. Thorne was someone super high on him. I was very high on him. I think everybody, that was like the one bright spot out of San Antonio this year was Jay Corbin and his emergence. Those final few weeks, he had 391 rushing yards in the final 4 games. Really emerged. Look at the Brahma season. It was a train wreck. Coaching changes, injuries, obviously so much behind the scenes. They also lost Destroying, which obviously cost them a playoff spot. But this
That's
is a
what it
team that
was.
they lost John Lovett early in the year. Then they lost Anthony McFarland midway through the season. So we saw Corbin really become that RB1 in that offense for Peyton Pardee, an offense that wanted to run the football. It became a run heavy offense, run the ball first and second downs, and Corbin was the product of that. And I think his explosiveness, his ability to get to the second level was really, what put him in the spotlight. And the former Giant finds his way back to the NFL, signing with the Falcons.
Yeah, and fully agree on that. He's a great story. Started as RB3 at the beginning of the year and finishes leading the league in rushing, which is kind of wild to think about. As far as the opportunity he's getting, I think it's a pretty good one. Let me pull up the Falcons. They did cut Jace McClellan, who was a draft pick last year for the Falcons, to make room for Corbin, who, if you were a betting man before, I think he would have been the guy. Obviously, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, those guys are locks. But beyond them, Carlos Washington, Elijah Dotson, these guys were street free agent pickups, UDFA types that have been around on that team for a couple of years now. I think they're definitely the obvious like RB3 guys, but I think there's a clear trajectory. There's just not that many running backs in the room. I think there's a decent chance he's RB4 at the end of this, and maybe he's on the roster, maybe he's not. That's going to be much more like, hey, can he play special teams right out the gate? I don't think he's going to be, if you're giving snaps to Corbin over Bijan Robinson, I think that's probably a mistake. But injuries happen, so you never know. But all in all, I think he was a no-brainer NFL guy, and I'm excited to see he's still 24, so I could totally see them saying, like, even if he's not ready right now, giving him a year or two on the practice squad to see if he pops.
Speaking of guys that I think are going to stick, the next signing, Harrison Mevis with the Jets. I mean, that's one that kind of feels like a no-brainer after the year that he had. I believe he was 20 for 21 the regular season, long of 56 yards. Also made his field goal in the postseason. I don't know what it is, man, but Birmingham just always finds a way to bring in some of the top kickers to the spring football scene. And Mevis, the thicker kicker, like we said, very accurate, huge leg. Was one of the more consistent kickers on kickoffs as well, which is going to be important considering the NFL and the UFL now have the same kickoff, which we didn't see a year ago. I think what makes Harrison's situation interesting is the fact that they released Andres Carlson, the former Packers kicker, who I know kind of had some ups and downs throughout his career. And the only other guy competing with Mevis right now is Caden Davis, who I believe is a rookie. So a guy like Harrison heading to this, he's already got a bit of NFL experience with the Panthers. I think he made his one field goal attempt that he had with Carolina in the preseason last year. But of course, like I said, after this UFL season, it kind of feels like a no-brainer to make this roster unless they bring in other competition, which feels unlikely at this point.
Yeah, that he's an absolute no-brainer. I mean, if you're gonna bet on one of these guys to make a 53-man roster, it's Mevis, and it's not particularly close. Caden Davis, he was a UDFA this offseason, so I'm not going to discount him. I think that's legit competition more than some of these other kickers that we've seen versus like Jake Bates and Brandon Aubrey in the past that were more like your vet option that was like a, hey, let's break class in case of an emergency type guy. But obviously, it's a two-man race. We'll see how he does through the preseason, but if you're betting on a guy, it's going to be him. And I'll also mention the fact that they signed him now is huge. And in general, we saw last year the guys who sign in that first week before the NFL goes on vacation, which is about to happen now-ish, where we won't see many signings in the next couple weeks. Those guys hit more frequently and bigger on these rosters where we had 4 of the 12 guys who signed in this week last year still on NFL rosters to this day, and 3 of them in Jake Bates, Jalen Redmond, and Andrea Tillman were impact players on 53-man rosters. So this group of 10 players right now is the group that you think, if anyone's going to pop like that, it's going to be one of these first couple guys, because they're going to have another month to look at a playbook and get ready, versus guys who sign in the middle of training camp are kind of just thrown into the mix. So, long story short, Mevis, I think if you're betting on a guy, he's the best bet.
I'm actually surprised we didn't see Blankenship on the list yet as well. I know there was kickers.
He did work out for the Jets. He just got beat out
Mevis beat him. Yeah, so he'll get a spot.
I know if Ducky was here, to make some comment about USFL over XFL. So since he's not here yet, I'll do it for him. But
he seems like an obvious one.
Blankenship should be the next guy. We're talking about special teamers and kickers. I'd assume Blankenship would be the next kicker to get signed from this bunch.
Right on. All right. Well, we'll keep moving here. We got Mario Goodrich, another Stallions guy. Stallions, I mean, is it any surprise every year? It seems to be they're a little bit of a pipeline in themselves. Heading to Mile High over with the Broncos. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. The Broncos worked out Jaden Price, who ended up signing with the Saints, and Mario Goodrich. They ended up signing Goodrich to the roster. Mario is a guy that he was hurt for a lot of the year, so his productivity I don't think was as high as it could have been for Birmingham, but he was one of the big offseason additions by Zach Potter. Again, it's a shame Zach Potter's not with the Stallions anymore. He's definitely going to be missed heading into this offseason. But Goodrich, he's got experience with the Eagles and the Giants. He's one of those corners that definitely, when he was on the field, their secondary play was at a higher level. I will say his playoff performance wasn't fantastic against Michigan, but outside of that, I thought he played pretty well. I think he had 15 tackles, 4 pass breakups on the year. That's a guy that he's probably a camp body at best, but, you never know. With these Stallions, Birmingham always seems to have guys that end up being a bit of a surprise, that end up landing on these practice squads. So we'll see what happens. But Goodrich, in my opinion, he's young enough to at least get another shot. So we'll see what he does in camp.
Yeah, I'll start with just saying that my internet's been really dodgy. So if I cut out here, just know, that's the reason why. But onto Goodrich. Yeah, it just happened. He's someone that I definitely agree. I think his trajectory to get on the 53-man roster is really tough. They just have a lot of cornerbacks. I mean, that's probably one of the top, 2-3 secondaries in the NFL right now, and they're super deep. They go probably 6-7 deep as far as depth goes. So, not impossible, but I think a 53-man roster spot's probably unlikely for Goodrich. I think he's probably fighting for a practice squad spot more accurately. For him, though, talking about his season, he's someone that clearly getting off the injury wasn't 100% healthy, because he was a pretty good cornerback through I think it was 5 or 6 weeks before he got hurt. And then once he got off it, he just wasn't quite the same. But he's someone that, for me, I was pretty high on before the injury. I lowered him a little bit, but this is just a really good cornerback year too. So last year he would have been one of the top guys, but this year there's just so many, and we'll talk about another one here, with another 2 of them actually, as we go through the show. But overall, he's someone that I'm just not as, gung-ho about how, hey, he's going to make a 53-man roster.
I kind of want to bunch a few signings together here in the next piece, because we're coming up on Seth Green. But the New Orleans Saints have now signed 3 UFL players. Any other NFL organizations only signed 1. And the thing I want to point out about the Saints that I think is really interesting about their approach to not only just bringing guys in for workouts, but now signing them. Brandon Mueller, former DPP for the Seattle Sea Dragons back in 2023, he's been involved in spring football for quite some time. He's now a senior executive over there at New Orleans. So I know he's been a really integral piece to bringing in these guys. I know he definitely was watching the UFL closely, and now they've signed 3 UFL players, and Renegades cornerback Jaden Price, Renegades tight end Seth Green, and then Stallions offensive lineman Barry Wesley. And another even more interesting connection through the whole Mueller process is they signed 2 Renegades, and who's the GM for the Arlington Renegades? Rick Mueller. That's Randy's brother. So, it's kind of cool to see how football scene is entirely connected, especially on the spring side of things. There's always going to be those connections that you look at and you're like, oh, this guy used to be in this spot, and okay, that's why they brought them in. So, not to mention, Barry Wesley was actually with Randy Mueller in Seattle in 2023. So, kind of neat how this was all pictured together. Nick, I'll let you take it away on a couple of those signings, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll start with Seth Green because I think he's the one with the toughest battle in front of him. They go. I think they've got like what is that? Yeah, they've got, oh my god, 9 tight ends on the roster right now, and a lot of them are not slouches. There's, obviously Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, whatever he's giving them at this point. But there's a bunch of guys. Dalen Holker's a pretty good depth piece too. So I think of the 3, he's the one that you're thinking's gonna do the least, just because it's gonna be tough for him to even get reps unless they start cutting a few of these guys early in camp. Then with this guy that I think is kind of in the middle there is Jaden Price. Their cornerback room's good. They've got I think it's a little bit less deep than like a Denver secondary is. I think this is a better opportunity than Denver would be as far as Price goes. Where had he signed in Denver, I think I'd be a little bit more pessimistic than I am now. But I do think he's probably more realistically a practice squad guy than a 53-man roster guy. He would have to like really stand out in the in preseason to be on the 53. But the one guy that I am very high on is Barry Wesley. I think of this group outside of Mevis, I think he's the one that I would bet on making a 53-man roster, just because I think Wesley obviously talked about the connection there with his old GM working in that front office. But also this year, Wesley really impressed me because he was a tackle for the Dragons a couple years ago and was able to make a multi-year NFL stint out of that with the Falcons. And then he moved inside with Birmingham and he was a guard for them pretty much the whole year. I think he played some snaps out at tackle, but for the most part, he was a guard. And he was one of the best guards.
He did win a game for them playing tackle. If you guys remember, back in week 3, he actually he had a false start. That resulted in a game-winning interception for the Renegades.
That was Wesley
getting called back. And next thing you know, Matt Corral leads the game-winning drive. So props to Barry for winning that game for them playing tackle. And he had a catch for them in Week 10 against Memphis. So multifaceted player in Barry Wesley.
That was the difference in Week 10, that catch.
Oh, yeah. For negative 6 yards.
But the fact that he has that tackle guard flexibility is gigantic when it comes to like, hey, are you going to make a 53-man roster? And if you look at their depth, I think there's like 6 to 7 locks on that roster. You're probably keeping 8 to 9. I think there's a huge avenue for him to, if he plays well in the preseason, shows that flexibility, plays well at tackle, which he did in 2023, plays well at guard, which he did in 2025. I think he's someone that could absolutely, become a 53-man roster kind of player. And, who knows? I mean, you're not, obviously you're not hoping for injuries, but both these tackles have had histories of injuries. So there is a universe where Barry Wesley is playing, is starting a game this year. I think, you can never bet on that because so much has to go either the right or wrong way, depending on your perspective. But I think if you're going to bet on one of these guys to be a true starter on offense or defense, it's going to be him.
I did want to comment on Seth Green really briefly. I think he's one of those guys in Arlington that he hasn't gotten a ton of reps because he's playing behind Sal Canela. And you look at a team like Arlington, they run a ton of 11 personnel, which, if you're not familiar with what that is one running back, one tight end. Who's the tight end primarily on the field? It's going to be Sal Canela, right? I mean, obviously, he's a go-to guy in plays for Luis Perez. Now, Green was involved a bit more this year. His snap count went up, and that was because they ran a bit more 12 personnel kind of midway through the year, especially as Kalen Ballage was taken off on the ground before he got injured. But Green's a guy that I think I'd love to see him, if it doesn't work out for him, the Saints, I'd love to see Seth back on a team, whether it's Arlington or somewhere else, where he gets an opportunity to be a bit more of a pass catcher, because I think he has that potential in him. Whenever he gets a chance to, run down the field, he makes plays for this Arlington team. So he's a guy that I think hasn't gotten enough reps as a pass catcher over the last couple seasons, and we'll see if that develops for him next year. But yeah, exciting stuff. I really love the Saints kind of being that pipeline right now with Randy Mueller and to your point, Wesley and Jaden Price is a guy that he was phenomenal. I mean, from day one, Nick, I feel like he was a guy that you and I were talking about a lot, which is the way that he allowed only 45% completion percentage in the league this year. He was targeted a lot. That says a lot about what he was able to do. Led the league in pass breakups. I think he's a guy that he's a little undersized. He's scrappy, but he's gonna make plays.
For
I
sure.
see Ducky's finally here.
Yeah, he made it. Now does his audio work?
Yeah, it works.
Hey!
Dude, I'm never buying Bluetooth devices again in my life.
I always run into a hassle myself. Nothing beats a good old cord.
Seriously.
I feel like at some point we're going to be forced to all have Bluetooth, but
it'll be embedded in our head.
Well, they better make it to where I can I've had these things like forever. So like they're old, but like dude, like when I TMI for I guess whoever cares, but my audio issues basically just it disconnects, reconnects, reconnects constantly. So now I got the gaming headset on.
See, that's what I found with my computer, and I found that it's the Bluetooth transmitter in my computer. When I connect like a USB one, it's Gucci. But the built-in, same with my controller. I'll be playing a little bit, and then it wonks out. I'm like, come on, man. It's supposed to make our life simple. It's just a little Bluetooth. Anyway.
Dude, who's got the pack of wolves in their house?
That's me this time. It's not Jake.
Really?
No, someone's dog. That's actually dumb that my mic's picking that up. I thought it wouldn't, because that's a dog that's like 2 apartment rooms over that way. But
well, that wasn't a dog. It was a wolf.
I thought you were. Never mind. Never mind.
Ref, I think I know where you're going, but let's moving this along. Damon Arnett, Roughnecks, ends up in the
Houston
NFL.
to Houston.
Former first-round pick. I mean, I thought he played pretty well this year. Was one of the bright spots of that defense. A Houston secondary that I don't think got enough attention this year. They played really well despite all the injuries. You had guys stepping up week in and week out. Arnett missed a few games because of injury. He was also inactive, I think, week 9 and week 10. But that's a guy, he had, I think, 19 tackles, a few pass breakups. He had the pick 6 in week 7 against Birmingham. And he came into this league and he showed, C.J. Johnson talked about it. Darryl Johnson talked about it, just the way that his character grew. I know Aaron Wilson, reporter down there in Houston, he's been on this story the whole time because Arnett's, he's trying to prove that he's a different player now. He's a different person. And that's what NFL teams are looking for. And I think he produced and he lands in Houston. So, Ref, you might have to go catch a Houston Texans game to go see your Roughnecks guy play. We'll see what happens, obviously, in training camp. But that's a guy that I thought played well this year and earned his role. And Nick, you're probably going to point this out, so I'm sorry if I stole this from you, but I'm giving you credit at the same time, so I think it counts. But similar to what you said, it's kind of like Gary on Conley last season.
Yeah, definitely a similar vibe where I felt like, just like DC last year, there were better DBs in that room, but because of that first-round pick, and it's not to dismiss anything, Arnett was a great cornerback. It was just more of Houston had just like I said, there's a ton of cornerback talent out there. I think the fact that he had that first round pedigree definitely helped kind of grease the wheels on getting another NFL opportunity. As far as, projecting forward goes, I'm not super optimistic about where he's at. That's another, tough cornerback room. And also I think, there was a lot of talk about, he's uber talented. He was this first round pick, but he was kind of a low floor, high ceiling guy. So I'm not thinking, oh, he figured it out. He's definitely going to be reaching his upside. We'll see. But he's definitely someone that's it was worth an NFL team kicking the tires on. I wasn't shocked that he got an NFL look. But I'm not thinking he's necessarily going to be a 53-man roster guy. Maybe he's like a Kelvin Harmon that is able to get hang around on a practice squad this year and see how it looks like in 26.
Good talk, guys. Good talk.
Yeah. Well, the next one up here, I'll just bring up, I'm actually surprised because it's usually the Cowboys are like the first, if not amongst the first to pick up. Now, I've always theorized that Daryl Johnston playing for the Cowboys probably has a good relationship with, the folks of Jerry World. But you know what? They didn't disappoint. They still came in. Got Perry and Winfrey from the Stallions. Again, the Stallions are really just a pipeline of their own. Cowboys sticking with tradition. Thoughts?
He'll be in good company, I guess. I mean, Cowboys suck, so like they're sticking.
I was waiting for that Ducky commentary. I'll jump in on Winfrey. That's a guy that I feel like coming into the year was expected to go back to the NFL as long as he played up to his potential. Ended up earning all UFL honors, had 29 tackles. I think he had upwards of 20 QB pressures as well. Had a sack late in the year. He's someone that has a lot. He's a very high caliber player when you look at his college career at Oklahoma. Came to the NFL, had some success, then had some off-field issues that knocked him out, and then injuries on top of that. So that's a guy that he's had a long journey, right? He's had ups and downs. I don't think it's been as much of a talent issue for Winfrey staying on an NFL roster as it's been, like I mentioned, off the field issues and injuries. So after a productive UFL season, I would say he's a guy. I know Dallas is in need of some DT depth. They also worked out Memphis Showboat's defensive tackle, Devere Levelston, who has some experience playing edge as well, but he's primarily been a DT throughout his career. So seeing Winfrey get signed there is pretty great. And I know, and I can't say who yet, but I know that the Cowboys plan on working out at least one or two more UFL DTs. So we'll see if they decide to bring in some more UFL competition at that position, which, ref, to your point, goes right along with the Jerry Jones loving the UFL and then players, because that has been the kind of the hotbed for some of the Cavante Turpin, Brandon Aubrey, Josh Butler. They've had quite a few guys go there and had a lot of success.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying I think Levelston's one of the most underrated players. I think he's an absolute.
Amen.
He's definitely going to get signed here, and probably not the next month because of vacation. But I think he's someone that absolutely I would be shocked if he doesn't have an opportunity by the end of August. And I think in Dallas, I actually do think he'd be more of an edge rusher than a defensive tackle. He's a little undersized to be a defensive tackle for them, so I think he'd probably be more of like you're kind of like, obviously he's not Cameron Jordan, but like that kind of like bigger bodied edge rusher for them.
And that's why he moved to edge for Memphis, because I believe he kind of was coming into Memphis as a DT and then ended up moving to edge for the final few games. I also wish we could have seen Levelston play the full season. I feel like his stat line would have given him more attention from the NFL.
Yeah, but getting back to Perry on Winfrey, he's another guy. Sorry, Stallions. They run the UFL to NFL stuff. I don't know what to tell you, because this is another spot that I think is perfect for him. When you look at the competition, there's just not that much. They drafted 2 developmental defensive tackles in the 7th round this year. Jay Tuai and then Tamia King Bestoy, I think's the name. I could be butchering that, but both those guys are just depth, guys that might be practice squad, might be back end to 53-man roster guys. Ernest Brown is there too, and then you have 3 kind of locks in Solomon Thomas, Mozzie Smith, and Osa Digizua. So there's, you think you're probably keeping 5. I think there's a huge opportunity for him if you're comparing it to like a Jalen Redmond kind of situation. I think he could make the 53-man roster outright. There's not that much in his way, and maybe they add a few more guys from the UFL into that room, but in general, he's definitely, right up there with Barry Wesley as guys that I think if you're, right now being like, who's going to be the guy at the end of August that surprises us by making a 53-man roster, I think he's up there. And like you said, all the talent in the world, obviously.
Right on. So the next one up, Sal Canela, heading back to the NFL, had a spot or two last year with the Buccaneers. Didn't hold. Had came back to the Renegades. Solid season, didn't make the playoffs. Heading to the Browns, which I don't know if you ask me, could be a pretty decent fit. They got plenty of quarterbacks to throw them the ball over there. Ducky, you're the resident Browns fan here. Give us your analysis.
I'm not a big Sal fan. I think he's just, yeah. I think he's just in a program that gets him the ball a lot, so he looked really good. But like, I think there are.
I mean, he is a former breaker.
Yeah. He had Kyle Sloter. I mean, when you have him throwing the ball, you can do almost anything. But he was just targeted a lot.
Almost anything but win.
But he had a couple fumbles there. I think there was definitely a couple tight ends I would have taken before him.
I feel like this is kind of, once again, the yearly Sal Canela signing where, like Ducky said, he is in a system where Arlington runs so much 11 personnel, and guess what? Luis Perez looks at Sal Canela so often in those first and second down scenarios, and third down too, especially this year. We saw Canela really exposing some linebacker matchups that were favorable for him against some teams. We saw him do it to Michigan back in week 7. There was a couple of just busted coverages where he got wide open. He's a guy that, very productive in the passing game. The run blocking has been what's always held him back. If you look at his PFF grades the last 4 years as a run blocker, he has not had a grade higher than, I believe, 49.0, which is still well under average. And that's his highest number over the last 4 seasons, which came this past year. So we'll see what happens in Cleveland. I think Canela, if there was a Bob Stoops / Chuck Long / Luis Perez situation for him in the NFL, he would thrive. But there's not. So I wouldn't get my hopes up that he's going to stick just because we've seen it happen every single offseason, the same story.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right that is the thing, and especially when you're talking about your path to making a roster in the NFL, being that like tight end 3 practice squad guy,
right.
You gotta be able to block. That comes before even being an elite pass catcher, unless you're like a wide receiver convert that you're is trying to figure it out. Like that would be the only scenario where if you look around the league, not a ton of those guys are your third tight end unless you have like blocking guys in front of them. So, when we look at Cleveland, I will say this is the best opportunity Canela's had so far. He is kind of getting up there. He's 28 now, I believe. 27, 28, something like that. So, this is probably the last opportunity, although I probably would have said that last year as well. So, maybe he just keeps getting looks. But I think this is a pretty good one. Looking at the room, David Njoku and Harold Fannin, who was a draft pick this year, those guys are locks. They're going to be your top 2 tight ends. But beyond them, Blake Whiteheart and Brendan Bates, both those guys are like NFL journeyman types that have been, cut by a few teams. So, probably, the favorites right now. But I could see a universe where he's their tight end 3 if he has a really good training camp, does good in the preseason. But, we haven't seen it yet. This is year 4 of him getting an NFL opportunity. He hasn't made it to even a practice squad yet. So, if he can make it to September 1st, that's great. But it's just like, hey, what has gone wrong the last 3 years, and what's going to change this year is kind of the question.
Right on. Next up, though, we got another Roughnecks. One of my guys heading over to the Chiefs. We got Spivey, another tight end, too. I mean, Chiefs, what they want to do? They want to win another championship, and this is how you do it. You pick up a guy from a team like the Roughnecks who went 500 times better than they were last year. Just imagine if the Chiefs go 500 times better than they did last year. I mean, talk about unstoppable. What are you going to do? Just give them a couple trophies at the end of the year? I think you might have to. You might as well just give one to the Roughnecks for lending them a player.
With that type of talk, I would be surprised if Kansas City doesn't come knocking for Jalen McClendon. Pick him up.
As they should. They should come for C.J. Johnson.
Pretty interchangeable on that end. But I'll let Thorne run with this one because I know he said prior to us jumping on the show that he's got plenty to say about this one. But I will point out, for one, Jorquarius Spivey, one of the coolest names that I've ever seen in the football scene. And number 2, it's not surprising to see him back in Kansas City because he was there last season. So.
Yeah, and I think that's really the story of this, is that they needed depth and they got a guy that has already been in that building that they're familiar with. You never know. I think if you look back at some of the guys last year, if you would have told me they would still be in the NFL, I would have said no. So you never know. But I will say I think this is probably the toughest, player / opportunity that we've seen of these 10. That I think the window for Spivey to break out and even get a practice squad spot with what this room looks like right now is really tough. And obviously Spivey, he wasn't the starter for Houston. He was kind of a depth tight end, and it's tough in these leagues. These teams just don't use tight ends like that. You mentioned that a lot with Seth Green, but even then, Seth Green was one of the most utilized tight end twos in the league. So
right. In Arlington,
yeah,
of all places.
So like, it's tough to get a full read on that because Josh Peterson was the guy there, who also didn't really produce much in that Houston offense. And in general, Houston hasn't been like a mecca for tight ends in recent years. You had Peterson a couple years ago. In his first real season, that was about it. So, that's tough. But then looking at the room, it's like, man, okay, they got 3 locks. So you immediately go, okay, probably, unless they keep 4 tight ends, probably not a 53-man roster guy. Because obviously Travis Kelce, but then Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, they've been there for a couple years. They seem like obvious 53-man rosters guys. And then your tight end 4 is Robert Tonyan, who is not Robert Tonyan of old with the Packers and the Bears and all that. Ducky, I know you're really interested about the Chiefs tight end room right now. I can see it on your face. But that's a tough tight end 4 at that point. And, they got a few college free agents there too. So, not impossible, but I think it's going to be, really tough for, a guy to crack even the practice squad in that room just because there's so many names, just like Seth Green in New Orleans.
I see. I'm trying to follow along in the chat a little bit. I saw Viking Wax Press asking about Matt Coughlin, who deserves a chance at the NFL. I would agree. I think Coughlin's been one of the more consistent kickers the last few years. It's kind of surprising that he hasn't gotten more looks than he has. I think something that could hurt him a bit, he is starting to get a bit up there in age. But at the same time, special teamers don't have as much of an age issue as other positions in football because we've seen guys in the NFL. Mason Crosby played till he's freaking 43 years old or however old he was. Kickers can last a while. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue for Colin. I think he's just been kind of overlooked, if we're being honest. And the problem for Matt is that anytime he's been in these spring leagues, there's always been a kicker that's kind of stolen the spotlight from him. Where 2023 was Brandon Aubrey, who ends up going to Dallas, and it kind of takes the spotlight there. Last year, you have Jake Bates, who's got that incredible story from Michigan to the NFL. And now this year, you've got the thicker kicker and Harrison Mevis, who's come in and really played well. And you got to respect the specs. Rodrigo Blankenship had another really good year. So Coughlin, an issue as well, he's playing for the Memphis Showboats. And that is not going to help your case when a team's 2-8 back-to-back seasons and just kind of, just so many organizational issues there, which we could do a whole episode on that one day maybe. But, yeah, I agree. I think Coughlin should at least get a workout at some point. I hope he gets one. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think last year he got a workout or two. I don't know off the top of my head. I know he worked out for the Jets at one point. There might have been another workout at some point during the year. Did not get an opportunity out of that. And that's been really the only opportunity, I think, even dating back to the USFL days for him. So it's definitely surprising. He's been pretty rock solid, and you'd think that there would have been some opportunity, but there is only 32 spots. It's something with kicker where, there might be, at most 40 to 48 guys in camp. So, and probably 40 of those guys are already decided. So, you're really splitting hairs for those last couple spots. And that's why guys kind of get stuck on the kicker circuit for years is the, like the Matthew Wrights of the world. So I agree. I think he's someone that I would have liked to see an opportunity already. But, it's definitely at this point, I'm like, okay, if it hadn't happened, why do I think it's going to happen now? Because I think he was even better in previous years.
So we got through all the signings. We have, I think there's still a little bit to talk about. So James, you put out an article, today? Is it today that this came out?
Sure.
Just this morning about some of the seasonal change, maybe not so seasonal change, just adjustments going into season 3. I don't know if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, I put out a tweet this morning and got out an article. There have been quite a few layoffs around the UFL as an organization. I kind of feel like we saw it coming, but I was told this past Friday we saw well over a dozen full-timers let go. And I want to be clear because some people didn't read my tweet or just kind of assumed that it was what we've seen the last couple of years where guys who are seasonal, obviously they get let go at the end of the season. So there's always going to be quote-unquote layoffs when a season ends because, well, they're seasonal workers and they get let go when the season concludes. This is not the case in this case. I was told Friday was a Black Friday where quite a few full-timers got let go, and you hate to see people lose their jobs. There's a lot of folks that work really, really hard in the UFL, and I want to give credit to everyone who's put in the effort that, to get the UFL to the point where it's at now. I mean, Ref, so many of these people behind the scenes who put in a lot of work. I know we're all very thankful. At the same time, I don't think it's any secret that there was change that needs to be made, especially in some of these markets. We saw attendance drop. Instead of 8 markets, the only team that saw an improvement was Michigan. St. Louis dropped. Obviously teams like Birmingham that have won 3 championships in a row, they dropped this past year. Arlington's plateaued. Houston dropped really drastically. Memphis was a disaster once again. So as far as we know, there were definitely some kind of, and these layoffs, to be clear, are at the market level for the most part. So you're looking at people who are VP business operations and team events. Those are the people that, I'll just go to the description in my article. Their responsibilities, they're overseeing team marketing, communications, game day event operations, ticket sales, local sponsorships, and all of that type of stuff. Really that local engagement. So Arlington, Birmingham, and Houston all let go of that position. We saw some marketing directors get canned as well in Arlington, in St. Louis, also Houston. So there's changes happening, and I personally think that it's good for the league as long as they can bring in people that are going to do a better job. And I think that's the big question, right, is who's going to come in. And Ref, we've talked about it plenty, is can you bring in people that actually want to go above and beyond and do this for more than just the paycheck? Because that's what you need in spring football. You can't have people that are just going through the motions, run the mill, like, oh, I did my job, that's good enough. Like, you can't have that in the UFL. We've seen it far too many times in spring ball. You can't afford to drop the ball like that. You just can't.
Well, you need a mixture too. You need to have people that are like in it to win it, that are like, they know what the mission is. They know what they're getting into, meaning they know this isn't the NBA. This isn't the NFL. This is spring football. That's why I've always thought whenever they bring in like MLS guys, even some of the rugby guys, they understand it's, you got to find the niche. You even have to create the niche for these local markets. But then addition to that, local markets, you got to have people that are from these areas, live in these areas. Great. But I think the more that these people are from these areas, that like they've lived there 10, 20 years of their life, maybe they were born there. They know the people, they have the connections. They know not just the venues, like the stadiums, but I brought up with the watch party, with the Houston Roughnecks watch party, like knowing even the smaller venues and making sure that you get the big screen. If you're going to have a watch party and there's a theater size screen, but then your watch party that you organized, everybody's watching a 32-inch screen, there's a problem there, right? There's a little bit of an issue because, there were some people there to watch the soccer game on the big screen, but surprisingly, the Roughnecks watch party outnumbered them. Maybe there was a little bit of surprise to that from the local people as well. But either way, you get the big TV. You make sure that the banner is the right direction.
The right.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
You go. Can you say that story on air? Do you?
Yeah, who cares? So we get to the watch party and I see the table there, and I noticed that there's like a sheet over it, but it's just a plain black sheet. I don't know, maybe like an hour into it, someone, I won't mention who, comes up and I see them pointing at the table, and sure as shit, the ticket people turn the table around, this big Roughnecks logo on the front. I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So it's those things though. Gosh. I don't know if a local person per se would have that expertise, but you want them to.
Yeah. Like James said, the only market that went up was Michigan, and the marketing guy, Jeremiah, is that his name?
Jeremiah Hergott, and then you got Scott Schiff over there.
Yes. Those two, I would give them all their flowers this year. I would not give flowers to anybody else. Those two guys, they took that market by the horns, and they definitely turned it around. There were so many Michigan fans even at the championship game, and I'd like to think that it was a lot of them that was getting the community together to go out and do that. And then even their watch party for the championship game was packed. They had a big TV, unlike Houston. but
Well,
it's
and
just-
they put the extra effort. They had like personalized cards for the
Yeah.
season ticket holders. Like, dude, the league should be looking at that and saying, "Oh, we need that in every market." That's genius.
They should
And
be
we
looking at
preached
Jeremiah.
this.
Yes, they should be looking at him and being like, "This guy, give him a raise, give him a different position that is a little bit higher because obviously he's doing something right." Both of them, Scott too, not.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you know,
and a lot of it, is what we've been preaching: grassroots marketing. I don't think people, especially higher up in the league, understand how important it is for these markets to have events. And even you look at somewhere like St. Louis, right? That market has been taken advantage of because they've been the crown jewel and the cash cow for this league. I think they had one, maybe two fan events all season long. I mean, and not to mention that the big fan event they had to get canceled twice because of weather and got moved around, and like fans kind of got burned in that regard. But it's just like, like it's kind of these things where, St. Louis, we saw them decline. They hosted 8 games this year. That's a lot of games in a 12-game season to have 8 of them in St. Louis. You expect fans to continue to show up when, the value for season ticket holders goes down and down. I mean, Ref, you're a season ticket holder down there in Houston, and I mean, the value that you got in 2023 is probably far superior to the value that you have now in 2025. So stuff like that. And, I was looking at the replies of my tweet that I sent out earlier today, and I saw someone in Arlington, they advertised rally towels for one of the games, and those rally towels were plain blue towels with no Renegades logo on it. Like, that screams cheap. That screams we don't care. That screams, it's like, you could basically just buy a blue towel from Dollar General and call it good at that point, right? Like,
yeah.
And I'm sure if James Baker's in the chat, he'll let us know it was probably
it's
the
probably
wrong
'cause
shade
Jace
of
is in
blue.
here. Otherwise, he'd be talking about putting in some McDonald's order. But
He's a fucking jerk.
whoa,
Sorry, beep.
Ooh,
We got to get one in per show. We have no guests this week.
it's still PG-13. We only got
Yeah.
one in.
Anyway, did I derail us?
Yeah.
So I'll bring us on track. I'll make it sadder. I'll cover up my mistake with this. Fred Smith passed away. I know there was a lot of, ever since the Showboats moved to Memphis, I think there was a lot of eyes on Fred Smith being kind of a crucial part of making that happen. There's maybe some speculation on won't he invest in the team. He's also he's a small investor in the Commanders as well. So he also has different ties to football. Also, one of the greatest stories in just business in general. FedEx, they didn't have enough money to make payroll, and so instead of putting the business, putting it out of business, putting it to pasture, this dude gets on a flight to Vegas, puts all the company money on the line. Wins. And FedEx is still here. So, I mean, for that story alone, that guy's got a big pair of kahunas. Sign him up. But sad nonetheless. I don't know if this will make any difference on if Memphis sticks around or doesn't stick around.
I think that's a big topic for us to discuss is what that means. And one, I mean, obviously, prayers to the Smith family, obviously, and FedEx family and whoever else Fred was involved with. A really key figure in Memphis, in the sports community, and just in the city in general. Like, let's be real, Memphis has not had a lot going for it the last 10, 20 years of its existence. But to have someone like Fred Smith, who's continually poured into the community, poured into the city and the people there, I think has been really big. And, hopefully we see his legacy carried on. But obviously he was a big reason why the Showboats went to Memphis in the first place. Back in Legacy USFL in 2023, the Tampa Bay Bandits get rebranded to the Memphis Showboats, and the Showboats and the Houston Gamblers get hubbed there. A lot of that was because of Fred Smith and, his backing and his push, to Fox that he wanted to eventually own this Memphis Showboats team. And now, we're heading into year 5 of spring football existing, going back to the 2022 season. At some point, ownership needs to come around. I think we talked about it an episode or two ago about we're kind of hitting that timeline where at some point they're going to need to start selling things off. And Memphis is definitely one of those teams that had Fred Smith lined up with FedEx, and who knows what's going to come of that. But another thing to note is, with the article I put out this morning, as far as we're aware, Memphis has not fired any of their staff. Their senior marketing coordinator, he left last month on his own accord for a job with the Memphis Grizzlies. But their VP of business ops, he's still there. Their other ticketing guys are still there. So that's a storyline to watch closely. What happens in Memphis now with Fred Smith no longer in the picture?
Wait, so the guy who was in Memphis for marketing left to go to the Grizzlies?
Yes.
Did the Grizzlies see the marketing from Memphis?
To be fair, Memphis did do 30 straight events going into the season. So there's at least that. And, he probably worked with what he was given to him, too,
Get your bag, dude. Get your bag.
Ducky's going to be like one of those UFL fans next year with the seating charts, but with the Grizzlies. Be like, interesting.
I've seen this before. Many times.
Just wait until they have a vintage night for the Grizzlies.
Vintage night, and then it turns into what did they turn in? Oh, that was Michigan. Never mind. To be fair, that's actually I want to talk about that. That's good marketing right there. I guess Michigan, one of their events was supposed to be something else, but then they realized it fell on Star Wars Day, and so they rebranded the marketing for that day into Star Wars Day, and did really well with it. They had stormtroopers on the field and everything, and that was just genius. Like doing that on the fly, that short of a notice, like, and Star Wars is a big thing. Like that's pretty smart on them.
You'll probably pull more people in with a Star Wars Day than a vintage day, 100%. Yeah.
And a vintage day is something that you can do down the road. Because I know there are plenty of Michigan Panthers fans that do have those connections to that 1983 team that won the championship way back when. So that's something that you can do at some point. And, I mean, I know they have those connections they can set up when they need to. So it's a good call. And that's the type of thing that, especially in spring ball, you got to make decisions on the fly. And you've got to make quality decisions on the fly. And I think that's kind of the key moving forward for this league. I know Russ Brandon, very adamant about it. And Sports Business Journal released an article a little bit earlier this week, or actually at the end of last week, kind of talking about, what we could see. And very vague in the article, but the thing that he did mention was, how important it is for them to really get back on the ground. I think he said the strength of our league is our football operations, and we need the business side to mirror that. The bottom line is we need more people in the stands in most of our markets, and that's our focus. Here is where I think the difference is, because last year, remember, that was the big thing coming out of UFL Season 1 was, remember, he quite literally went on record saying, our main focus and emphasis is getting boots on the ground. That didn't really happen. And we saw the effects of that this year with tickets down in 7 of 8 markets. That cannot be a false promise once again. This league has got to do, and I think seeing the early signs of some of these organizational changes being made, that's a good sign. That's a sign that they are trying to take these steps, and we'll see what happens. But if we can get some more people in the building, like what Ducky said, what Michigan has been doing, they need to replicate what Michigan has been doing in some of these markets. You might not have to do that in St. Louis, but there are a lot of markets that could really, really use that grassroots connections of people that understand their own markets.
Yep.
Scott Schiff and Jeremiah have been in Michigan. They know what this market needs. So that's going to be huge. I think that's another thing too is, so many of these workers have been remote. You have guys, Birmingham's director of ticket sales is also San Antonio's director of ticket sales, who's based out of San Antonio. He does a good job in San Antonio, but he can only do so much for the Birmingham market. And the reason why that happened is because Birmingham's director left prior to the season. That was a whole to-do, on that end. But it's like, you got to be able to find people in your own markets to be in these roles. Like, it's just plain and simple.
Yep. Well, is there any other topics? I know this is off season for you guys. We're still here. We're still talking. Just may not have as much to talk about.
The showcases did come out today.
Oh, so. Yeah, that's right. So it's nice to see those return.
Better say the disclaimer now so nobody starts spreading rumors. Just because there's a showcase in a city doesn't mean that city's getting a team.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what is Arizona's on that list? Was it Pittsburgh as well?
Los Angeles. No, not Pittsburgh, but Orlando. These are just places that the league, they're trying to kind of do it regionally, where players from specific regions of the U.S. can find somewhere to go, as opposed to having to, that's how they do it. So just because they're doing one in Phoenix, Arizona, doesn't mean that the Arizona Hotshots are coming back. So let's make that clear.
Well, I'm going to clip that to where it says James is saying the Arizona Hotshots are coming back.
You suck.
That's going straight to Reddit. He's a PFN
It's going
guy.
right on UFL Daily. I know it.
He's a PFN guy. They know what they're doing over there.
But yeah, I mean, the showcase is obviously, if you're a free agent, you're trying to get some looks. I believe they have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 showcases coming up. I will say, I say the showcases are worth it if you're trying to go get testing done. If you're trying to go somewhere where you're going to get a bunch of reps, it's probably not the spot for you. I know just speaking to people that were at these showcases the last couple of years, it's primarily testing and kind of basic drills, and then you can run a few reps here and there. But if you're thinking of going to a showcase primarily to run reps, it's probably not the spot for you. But it is a great place to go if you're trying to, you want to get an updated 40 time, right? Did you not run well at your pro day? That's a huge thing, right? I mean, there's guys that are capable of running a 4.4, 4.5, and at their pro day, they run a 4.7. They can run a 4.5, but they ran a 4.7 at their pro day, and then it doesn't matter if you run a 4.5 in your backyard. They're not counting that. So this is an opportunity that if you feel like you got snubbed, and you want to kind of get some better numbers on your just kind of for your profile, that this is something that's good for you.
It's nice to see them return. Will they be open to the public? Almost certainly not. They might open one of them. If I were to make a guess, probably the Arlington one. It's at Choctaw. It feels like a good opportunity to maybe sell some tickets. The rest of them are at smaller locations. And just from what we've seen in the past before, they usually don't open these things up. That being said, I'm sure you can just waltz up to them. I'm sure you could just go to the parking lot and see exactly.
I mean, hey, if you can find a UFL black tank top on eBay, get in contact with James Baker. You can probably make your way into one.
Just don't be handing out cards in the parking lot.
yeah, you get arrested for that. When's the draft?
College draft, still no date officially dropped for that, but it's supposed to be first or second week of July.
A really good marketing thing would be to air that. Put that on. Literally, you don't have to put it on national TV. Just literally put it on YouTube.
Yeah, right on.
I know that was
PF Newsroom.
I know he posted that. Yeah, have us. We'll host.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, Ref, you and Zach did that whole
live react
draft live stream way back when. I mean,
maybe we'll do that again this year.
And another guy, I know Luke Miller, who rest in peace. I don't know why he never joins us anymore, but I know he posted something the other day about stream it, put it to YouTube, and a guy who'd be really good for it is Emery Hunt, who I know Luke shouted out. He knows so much about all these prospects, and he's a guy that you could have in there just talk for 30 seconds about each signing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not that difficult.
Put Logan Graffia with him. Yeah.
I will say, as far as like the draft is concerned, I really wish that they would do away with the college draft and instead have a NFL free agent draft later in the year. I think, we've seen it now where like a lot of ways this draft is a either futures or camp body draft. So you're either going for a guy that you're going to probably get right away that's maybe like, there's a few guys you'll get lucky with. I think like Rashad Williams for Houston was a really nice piece for them this year. I'm sure there's others I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But for the most part, the guys that are really good that get drafted are guys that are going to stick around in the NFL for a couple of years. And maybe now you're seeing some of them get cut this cycle and sign a year later. But there's just not a ton of hype with that because it's either, if they're good, they're not going to be with the team yet, or if they're not good, they're probably going to be more of a depth piece. So I would love for them to have it instead be in like, late October, maybe early November, and have it be all the cuts that don't have their rights held by a team go into a draft pool, and that way it would balance the league a little bit out. Where like we've seen Birmingham dominate the that whole recruiting process, and Zach Potter really kind of crowd out a lot of teams and beat players, beat other teams to players. And that would go away and it would be a little bit more balanced, and maybe a team like Memphis could get some hype because hey, they have the first overall pick, they take Dorian Thompson-Robinson or whoever that pick is, and then that's a player you can market, and instead of marketing a player that's not going to play for you, like a Jason Bean.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, aren't the teams allocated though?
Jason Bean is the starting quarterback for the Showboats. What are you talking about?
he might
But
be.
yes, the
year.
teams are allocated until December 1st. I put an article out on that, I think, early this year or late last year.
Okay.
I could probably just like republish that for this year so people understand. But yes, each UFL team has 4 NFL teams that they have the rights to those players first, to where they can only sign from those 4 teams unless another UFL team gives them. Let me just pull. I know I have the sheet up here.
So that draft wouldn't really.
Give me.
And
Give me
you just
one
do
second.
away with that because
Okay.
I mean, for me, that system is like interesting but flawed because it goes away December 1st. So if a
Yeah.
player wants to go to a team, you could just
They're
tell
gonna
him,
wait.
we just sign you on December 1st, whatever, or December 2nd, whatever it was. Just wait till that date. It doesn't go up to the season. It's just for like right after a guy gets cut in like September. So there was a few times like Jaden Price got signed by Birmingham and traded to Arlington because Arlington wanted him. But for the most part, it's just not.
It's flawed. Yeah.
The rationale that I've heard in the past is that hey, if you're a team, you only have to go to 4 training camps if you're a GM instead of trying to go to all 32. But still, I don't know. It just always felt like you can do that better.
Yeah, and the way it works as well is it goes. It only rolls over every 3 seasons. So, last off season, it was any player from the 2021 draft up to 2024 was part of. That's why we saw because there were some teams that broke that quote unquote allocation prior to the December 1st deadline, but that's because they were came out of college in 2019 or 2020 or something along those lines. So this year it'll be rolled over to 2022. So anyone from 2021 and before, they can sign anywhere, no matter what time. It does not matter.
That's so
But
confusing.
yes, to
Yeah, I
your point,
forgot
Thorne.
about that.
So let's say
And
there's a guy that entered the NFL in 2023, and he was with the Carolina Panthers. The Birmingham Stallions would have his rights. But let's say the San Antonio Brahmas want to sign him. They either A, have to wait until December 1st and hope that Birmingham doesn't sign him, or B, I believe Birmingham could, Birmingham could be like, you know what, we're not going to sign this guy anyway, so we'll release his rights to you. But his rights have to be released. So that, to my understanding, is how it works. Granted, guys, this could all be 100% misinformation because we're back in the offseason and the UFL changes stuff every year. So
It's gonna change
who
the
knows?
second
But-
we end this live.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope so.
More
It
I
is,
hope
it's
you're
so
right.
It's so confusing. Like now hearing you guys like talk about it in depth, it's like I'm not gonna pay attention to that, nor do I think I care.
And it doesn't really affect the fan. Like it's not an interesting thing for fans. Like it's
Yeah.
not something that like a
the
player
problem-
you're gonna get excited about.
the idea behind it is to try to make it a bit regional, but you lose that because of the way the UFL was set up. It's not at all. Like you just can't.
Like if they played in Houston and there was like the 2
Right.
Texas teams,
Like
that kind of
Houston-
makes sense,
So like Houston obviously has the first rights to the Houston Texans, right? But then they also have the rights to the Indianapolis Colts, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Las Vegas Raiders.
Well,
Like
It'd be easier to do it with colleges, like that
Right.
way.
Also, isn't it just if they were in camp too? So like if a guy gets cut right now, he has free rights. I'm pretty sure too. I think so. It's only like guys who are in a camp with a team. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so, but we can try to.
There's no way. If a guy got cut right now, like Trey McKitty, we mentioned in Discord, we talked about him. He just got cut from the Browns because they signed Canela. I forget which team. Mention what team the Browns are allocated to.
At
Yeah.
this point, probably Brahmas.
See, so like
It might
some
be,
of
yeah.
these
like-
allocations make sense though, because like Michigan has the whole NFC North. They've got Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago, and Minnesota. Like that makes perfect sense. But then Birmingham's got Atlanta and Carolina, and then they have the Los Angeles Chargers and the LA Rams, and it's just like, huh?
Yeah.
So who has
if I
Cleveland?
The Arlington Renegades.
the one that always got me was Kansas City being DC. Because
Yeah.
isn't Kansas City so obviously San Antonio or St. Louis?
St. Louis.
And St. Louis has like Seattle or something that's like completely irrelevant that you could
Yeah,
have
they've
given
got
to DC.
Seattle and San Francisco.
And like I think is it DC doesn't have Philly or Pittsburgh. It's one of the two. That's like
Pittsburgh is with Arlington.
yeah, like what? It's whatever.
That's so dumb.
We could talk forever about this. It's
Yeah.
so weird.
Jim Pop's gotta hire us.
Don't
One
hire
day.
me.
One day, guys.
I'll take the call.
You hire these guys. I'll stay in this.
Wait,
chair.
we got the elite roster boy on the phone. You better pick up.
I hope so.
Good stuff. I
One of
love
these
the off
days.
season will be fun, guys. I know we talked about it last week. Free agency is going to be interesting. We've got showcases. We've got the college draft coming up. We got potential relocation. I highly doubt expansion's happening at this point unless Donald Trump puts a gun to Russ Brandon's head. So we'll see what happens.
I heard it's in the big beautiful bill that they have to expand
Yes.
the UFL.
He's not putting a
Put
gun
some
to
of
his
that
head. He's gonna send
Iran
a
money
bomb through.
Yeah, he's going to take some of that
UFL
pallet
starting to
money.
look like Iran.
Gotta bring back the
Wait.
generals.
Hey, no, they got. I heard there's oil on their ECU stadium.
The Roughnecks are screwed.
Oh, man.
They need freedom.
From CJ Johnson?
He's gonna put a whole entire new government in.
Going to give him 2 weeks, and then like 2 days later, next thing you know.
I love how uncomfortable Thorne gets whenever we start
I
getting
plead the fifth. I am not.
He
saying
lives
a
too
word.
close to DC. His lines are tapped. Somebody in
Yeah,
the dark room glowing in the dark is like, what did he just say?
I will say, if DC got nuked, I would be a goner for sure. But that's besides.
I don't want that to happen.
No, I would absolutely be gone. I would not survive that. But
Dude, Michigan losing the championship and Thorne getting nuked in the same season.
But think on the bright side. What if you survive and you get some
I don't
new
wanna survive.
superpowers? You're like
I don't want to survive.
Blob Man. Be like, what if the roster
Blob to
like
DC.
this?
There you go.
I want to.
He's the
the
mascot.
new,
You
the
don't
new
even gotta
mascot
find
and
the
Thorne just
thing.
walks out.
I want to be a shadow on my wall. I do not.
Well, you might be after that nuke drops.
Yeah.
So back to football, James. You haven't heard anything about expansion then, or those got talked down?
My understanding is that those talks are still on the table, but they're trending in the direction of I don't think we see expansion this year. I don't see how the league can expand and survive, and I think everybody knows that. And my hope is that obviously the DOJ has been pushing for 10 teams. That was kind of the whole point of the deal, but the league also needs to tell I feel like if the league is giving this message of like, hey, if you guys force us to expand to 10 teams, we're shutting everything down. We're not going to survive.
Right.
Like, there's got to be some leverage that the UFL has on that end where it's like, do you want everybody to lose their jobs next year? Or do you want us to stay alive and hopefully bring more jobs back in 2027 or 2028?
Yes.
So that would be my hope.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. There's also the whole idea of expansion by relocation, which is, you can relocate two teams and you're
that's always
technically
on the table, yeah.
expanding, but, we'll see what happens.
But yeah, true expansion. I don't think should happen. I
agree.
I don't think expanding that would be smart, just because until you're going to get into your home markets, that shouldn't be happening. And I also said in the Discord, I think you either go to one hub or you go to all your cities. I think traveling this XFL style hub where you're traveling to your home games, that's stupid. It's a waste of money. The players hate it. The coaches probably hate it. I guarantee you they all hate it. You're wasting their time by doing this. Just let them stay in Arlington. Put the hub there. It worked for the USFL. It will definitely work for the UFL.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, I think that's it. But I will say this. Everybody who's in the chat, all 25 of you, I don't see 25 likes on the video. So there's what I need you to do. Go hit the like button. It's free. And I always say if it's free, it's me. Get signed up. Make sure you're following us at Around the UFL, at PF Newsroom, at all the handles that you see on the screen, especially James, because, this dude's knocking out news daily. Another reason you need to check out pfnewsroom.com daily for all the latest things. Zachy Boy and I know we're going to be recording another episode because we have the AF1 championship or the crown. Now, I will say, they better have a crown. If I tune into this game at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, and there's not a crown by the end of it, I am going to have some words to say, because if it's chase for the crown, I expect to see a crown. Now, it can't be a Burger King crown for many reasons.
For obvious reasons.
The meme has ruined the Burger King crown. Plus, I think they should
parched.
Yeah. So anyway, tune into that AF1 game. Zachy Boy and I'll be talking about it. I know we got some interview this week too. Don't know who it is, but that's all part of the surprise. So tune into that.
And I'd like to apologize to all the fans who tuned into the show this week. I promise you I did my best to get us a guest. It's the off season, and it's difficult to.
We begged James all day. We're like, dude, have you reached out to him yet? And he's like, I will. Don't worry about it.
No, guys, to be clear, I reached out for requests on Friday and never got a response. So
next time we can't get a guest. Next time we can't get a guest, we'll get Zach on, and Zach and I will open up Maximum Football, and we'll play each other.
Hey, I'm down with that.
You guys can watch that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Probably be better than the time I played them. See, I wonder if they still.
We gotta do a. I think an off-season episode is gonna have to be like a game night for the ATU panel. Like,
yeah, it'd be fun.
Because we could just talk football while playing a game. I feel like that'd be.
Could do like we could get like UFL Jeopardy or something like that.
That would be interesting.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we could probably find somebody to make like questions and stuff for us.
Yeah, easily you could do UFL Jeopardy.
Yeah,
I feel like I'd definitely lose unless you put some like funny tiers in there, but or just random off the wall.
Well, that breakers category, you'll have it on lock.
Yeah. Oh God, people were talking about me in the chat now because I said the one hub thing. I'm just saying, from like a player standpoint, it's a good thing.
Yeah, and having them in the cities, and there's a million reasons why having them.
I said either or. I said either put them either put them in their home markets or don't do whatever the hell you're doing now. That just doesn't work.
Well, that's not going to happen because they have a multi-year deal with Arlington that's very cost-friendly. So the Arlington hub, to my knowledge, is at least through 2027. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And also to answer someone's question in here, I'm not saying expansion is never happening. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. And if it does, it'll probably be expansion by relocation. But this could all change. I mean, this stuff is so fluid. It's the UFL, so please don't quote me on anything right now because who the hell
UFL,
knows?
He's a PFN guy. They know what they're saying over there.
I'm too negative.
Yeah. You've been wrong in the space one too many times, buddy. Anyway. Yo.
We probably shouldn't say it on here. Reed quit.
Oh.
So I wish I had my freaking confetti cannon right now, dude. Screw that guy. What
we shouldn't say it on your sense immediately.
Dude,
listen, man, I'm a former guest on his show.
That dude was such a leech to the community. It is insane. You guys don't got to speak on it, but I definitely will. That guy was just horrible for the community.
Reed, thank you for doing everything that you did for the spring football space. I appreciate you giving me a platform early on. So.
Hey, he was part of the newsroom once upon a time.
I'm glad
he'll be in the PFN Hall of Fame somewhere.
Damn right he will. Well,
first ballot.
No, he's going to be Pete Rose.
Well, I think that's about it for this week, guys.
I held it back until then.
Sign everybody up.